Hi, and thanks for logging on to the Daily Dvar. Here's a brand new halacha for you, and it's for Sunday, the 10th day of July. Here we go. Yesterday on Friday, we were talking about the halachas about brachas on desserts. A lot of rabbis say that when you have something like fruit at the end of a big Shabbos meal, that it is kind of separate and away from the meal, and there should be a separate bracha of borei pri ha'etz on the fruit dessert. And I promised you today on Sunday that we would discuss what to do when cake is your dessert. It's a big, big mishka babel in the halacha. I'll tell you why. Because everybody knows that bread gets hamotzi. And everybody knows that something that the Talmud, the Gemara calls pas haba bekisnin, which might mean pocket bread or whatever. Everybody knows that those kinds of foods get a mizonos. The thing is that nobody knows, there's a big argument about what pas haba bekisnin is. Some say that pas haba bekisnin, the classic mizonos kind of thing, is what we nowadays call cake. Some people say that pasaba bekisnin are the stuff that we nowadays call hard pretzels. And some say that pasaba bekisnin are like pies that are filled with fruit inside of them. So we don't know what the real pasaba bekisnin is. There's large arguments about it, and whatever pasaba bekisnin is, that's the thing that gets mizonos. So that makes for a big mix-up as to what to do when cake is eaten at the end of the meal. Because let's say the real pasaba bekisnin that gets mizonos is hard pretzels. Okay, then the ordinary mushy piece of chocolate cake that you just had at the end of your meal is not the classic mizonos pasaba bekisnin, and your brownie or chocolate cake that you're having at dessert falls more under the hamotzi type of thing that was made at the beginning of the meal. So we want to be lenient and not make unnecessary brachos, so it leads to a giant confusion. I'll tell you what the safest thing to do is. If you're having that cake at the end of the meal because you're still hungry for it, and you're still basically continuing the meal, which is sometimes how you feel when you have cake at dessert. You're still kind of hungry for it. It's not just like a sherbet at the end of the meal that just kind of gives you a minty taste at the end of the meal. You like that cake and you're chomping into a big piece of it. Then it's much less confusing. Then it's certainly a continuation of your bread meal, and it certainly does not need its own bracha. So that should take care of you 80 or 90% of the time. There's a delicious piece of chocolate cake in front of you. You're hungry for it, so it doesn't need its own separate bracha. And anyway, there are a fair number of poskim that say ordinary good cake, what we call cake today, chocolatey, brownies type stuff. A lot of people say that anyway falls under the category of it was similar enough to the bread that the hamotzi at the beginning of the meal covers for it. So I think it's safe to say that for most of the cakes that you eat at the end of a meal, a lot of rabbis would say that a bracha is not necessary on a cake regular dessert, and therefore it's safe to not make a bracha on cake desserts at the end of a meal. You might want to discuss it with your rabbi. It is quite complex, and there are a lot of other opinions. I'm just giving you the safe one that a lot of rabbis hold of, is that cake at the end of a meal, at a Shabbos meal, let's say, especially when you're hungry for it, does not need its own separate bracha. Thanks for logging on. Log on again tomorrow for more. Bye-bye.